Also, just to kind of wrap this up, I would not try to be a software developer today without some kind of portfolio. Nobody is going to reach out to you. Nobody's going to trust you unless you're a professional coder who's did exceptional on your HackerRank assessment or your coding assessment or your whiteboard assessment, because I think it is the best way to demonstrate your proficiency, because for the most part it's incontrovertible proof that you know what you're doing. What is up, guys? This is Liquid Latino back, getting a job without experience. So a lot of companies that you've been applying to probably want you to have some experience, and you might have graduated from college just like I did and have been applying to jobs just like I did, but haven't been called back just like I did. So the reason you weren't getting a call back is because it's a risk for companies to hire somebody who doesn't actually know how to code. And you might say you have all this experience on learning how to code and whatnot, but it's a good idea to have a portfolio of some of the work you've done. If a potential employer can see code that you've written, projects you've created, they can be more sure you have at least some idea of what you're doing and can probably write some code for them. So I'd highly recommend creating some small projects. As many software developers are judged by their GitHub profile. So if I were starting out without experience, I would make a GitHub profile as impressive as possible. I'm a computer science graduate, but in the process of making my portfolio pretty much from scratch to appeal for some software engineering full stack developer positions. So I'm using resources online to create a web application, a dating app. If you guys want to see that, let me know. I might just make a video on that. If you need some help on creating some of these small projects, I highly recommend going through your previous projects that you've done in school, or learning how to do them by using YouTube videos, using Udemy courses. During an interview or during a phone screening, companies are going to ask you, like, what are some of the projects you've done? I've been asked this on multiple interviews that I've done with different companies. Some don't ask, but a lot of them do, and you want to be able to talk about some of the projects you've built. If you haven't built one project, it's going to be so hard to get past that initial phone screening. So I highly recommend doing at least 3 to 4. I'm currently doing one. My portfolio is, I'm creating a dating application. So the first thing I did was create a web API. After that, I reviewed a lot of the .NET client, .NET framework files, and weeded some out, added some things in, made sure my web API ran successfully, create my database using the code first approach. I added a source control. After that, I created a Angular application, and then after I create the Angular application, I made sure that HTTP requests from Angular can fetch directly to my API and bind data from my API to my HTML to display on the page. And I also added Bootstrap to have some awesome fonts. And I also made the initial commit onto GitHub after I did that, and the application is still not done. It takes a little bit. I'm in the process of making sure a user can register, which I just completed, but not only that, can log in, able to see the list of users, and the user should be able to message another user in this dating app that I'm creating. It's definitely taking a lot longer than I thought it would, but whatever. A lot of companies have asked me, have you tested? So you might want to include unit tests or automated tests of some sort to show you that you have the ability to write test code. You will want to show off the best of your abilities with these sample projects on your portfolio. It can be a good idea to bring your laptop to an interview already with your applications already loaded up so that you can show the interviewer the code you wrote. Another way that I've heard is creating your own company. It's sometimes if you didn't know, companies are started by one person and can just have a variety of skeleton staff of contractors that they found, or freelancers, part-time workers. And to be honest, you could put that on your resume. There's no reason, there's no law why you shouldn't create your own software development company. You could easily develop an application, sell, distribute the app, and call yourself a software developer for your own company. And if you're just starting out a business, you can always just form a small company by filing an LLC or a DBA, doing business as, and publish that into the App Store, sell it online. But that's just if you don't want to do the projects. But either way, I do that, honestly. I was thinking about doing that as I build my portfolio, but first I'd like to build my portfolio as soon as possible. But yes, there's no way lying, and it's perfectly legitimate to have yourself as a software developer for your own company if you want to put that on your resume. Also, companies would rather hire self-starters who form their own software company, built an app and put it up for sale, than someone who just worked for someone else in their career. I realize not all employers will think this way, but many will, so you'd be surprised in how many. Just to go over everything again, make sure you are not a risk to that company. Make sure you have your logic down. There are some books for you to read to maximize your credibility, maximize your expertise, in your logic. Also, have a portfolio of some of the work you've done. So create some small projects. There's a lot of tutorials online, lots of tutorials that you can follow, but make sure you know what you're talking about. Write some notes, so when you get asked about what you did in your web application or mobile application or whatever, that you're able to answer their questions on, how did you create the login? How did you salt the password? How did you hash the password? What led you to create this login method? 3 or 4 applications or projects that you've built, and also you might want to include the unit test or automated test that show that you have some ability to write test code. Definitely recommend that. Companies are always looking for testers. It's actually the quickest way to enter a software company is to become a tester, and from there you could probably move within a company. But one of the best approaches is creating your own company. Like I said, you could create your own software development company, make your own app, make your own software, make your own website, and list yourself as the software developer for that company. It is no way lying, and it is perfectly legitimate. And too many people think too narrowly and don't realize how viable and perfectly reasonable an option this is. But I would not advocate in lying in any way. If you build a application, create your own software developer company, there's no reason why you can't call yourself a software developer for that company and put the experience on your resume. I don't care what anyone says. But I would not volunteer this information. You don't need to. I don't think many people will ask you either. But if they do, companies might like that. Also, just to kind of wrap this up, I would not try to be a software developer today without some kind of portfolio. Nobody is going to reach out to you. Nobody's going to trust you unless you're a professional coder who's did exceptional on your HackerRank assessment or your coding assessment or your whiteboard assessment, because I think it is the best way to demonstrate your proficiency, because for the most part it's incontrovertible proof that you know what you're doing. So yeah, this concludes why nobody is reaching out to you, why you have a 1 to 5% hit rate on how many applications you send, or this could explain why the only company reaching out to you is Revature or any of those staffing companies who are pretty much useless in my opinion. I would not advocate for using a staffing company. I don't think it's necessary, but just do your research before you get too excited about Revature. But yeah, this concludes this video on getting a job without experience, or why you don't have a successful hire rate on your resume. Also, there's another part to this. It's preparing for your interviews. Another video, if you guys like these types of videos, I could talk about how to prepare for an interview as best as possible, because like I said, if once you pass the first initial phone screening, once you pass the first initial talks, there's still an interview, an on-site interview or a online interview, and I could definitely make a video on how to best improve your chances of how to get an interview in today's economy, which is booming from what I hear. But yes, if you want to increase your hit rate, start a portfolio, have an online presence, create your own company. You have to not be a risk. If you have no experience, that your primary strategy to getting a job as a software developer is to prove that you can code and that it's not BS. Make it pretty clear to any company considering you for a position, even though you don't have direct work experience, you are an experienced programmer, and you must have some external proof that you know how to code. That is going to help you get your foot in the door. Anyways, if you like that video, definitely subscribe or like or whatever. This is the beginning to my online presence. Liquid Latino out.